Hi there, esteemed audience, and welcome to another episode of Middle Grade Ninja. I'm your host, Rob Kent, and as you know, I'm the author of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, which is available as an audiobook, a paperback, and the ebook is free. Yes, free to download whenever you're watching or listening to us, whenever fine audiobooks are sold. Under the super secret pen name Robert Kent, I've written some stories for older readers. You can find out more about those, and more importantly, you can find interviews with thousands of authors, literary agents, editors, book publicists, book people, the world's best people, at middlegradeninja.com. I couldn't be more excited. We are talking today with none other than Xiran Zhao. Xiran, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm pumped. This book, Zachary, Ying and the Dragon Emperor, is absolutely hilarious and insightful and just a wonderful read. So I'm thrilled to talk to the author tonight. Esteemed audience knows that I never torture my guests by making them sit through me summarizing either their book or their background, because I'll get it wrong and you'll be sitting there and you'll know that I've gotten it wrong, and we'll both be sitting here with that knowledge. So rather than subjecting you to that, probably the best place to start is if you would give an overview of your background, and we'll go from there.
Okay, hello. Also, I don't even have the hardcovers for Zachary yet. And oh my God, it looks beautiful.
I have two copies. I'm holding one hardcover because it's the nice one that I can display here.
Then yes, it's so pretty. Oh my God, I can't
my
wait.
Water on.
I can't wait to get my hands on it. Yeah. So hello, I am Xiran Zhao, and then I am the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the YA novel Iron Widow. And then also Zachary is my upcoming middle grade debut. And it is about Zach, a Chinese American boy who didn't really grow up connected to the Chinese side of his heritage. But then one day, the spirit of the first emperor of China possesses his AR gaming headset and compels him on a journey across China to heist artifacts and defeat figures from myth and history in order to seal a portal to the underworld so he can save China and also save his mom's spirit. And so that is Zachary. And then also some of you might know me as a YouTuber, which I accidentally became after a rant of mine about the 2020 Mulan movie went viral on the internet. And then I just kept making videos. And yeah, so that's a thing, I guess. I have, I think, 425,000 subscribers on YouTube. So a bit of subscribers. And yeah, so that is me now. I am a double-time author and YouTuber, and it's a very strange life, but it's been fun.
Well, one of those subscribers is now me. I was digging into your history playlist, and it's I'm a big fan of hardcore history and of Crash Course, anything that will take me through and give me a history lessons. And then I've got you on my list. I'm like, oh my God, I have so much history to enjoy.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, I love Dan Carlin.
So there's any number of places that we can start. I guess one place to start is, I know that you would imagine stories when you were growing up, but you didn't put anything on paper until you were 15. Why the long wait?
Oh, I think it's because, well, I am not sure actually. I think, thinking back, I think it's mainly just school had me so busy and I was so easily distracted. And then I could never, I did try to write a few times, I guess. I just didn't have the proper motivation, I guess. I would always just sit there and think about the stories I wanted to write, but the writing process itself is, I think even now it's pretty difficult for me. It takes a real amount of willpower for me to force myself to sit down and actually write. And I think that's the case for a lot of writers. You see a lot of writers who just world build all the time and then go on the internet and look up stuff about writing, but then when it comes to actual writing, they're like, eh. So yeah, that is me too. I have to really force myself to write.
But reading about writing is so much easier than writing.
I know, right?
So what happens at 15 that changes things for you?
Okay, so I was at an anime convention where I met a guy and he was 23, but don't worry, this story doesn't get creepy. So he was 23 and then he didn't know I was 15. And so he told me that he was a writer. And then I was like, oh, I'm a writer too. But then we exchanged emails and then he told me to send him some of my writing after I got home. And then after I got home, I was like, oh no. So I actually like had to sit down and write the first chapter of the main story that was like in my head at the time. And then I sent it to him and he was like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. And then he gave me some constructive criticism. So I really enjoyed getting feedback. So I ended up like writing more chapters and then writing the entire novel. And then like he also like knew I was 15 at that point, so he kind of like really backed off and just took a strict mentorship position toward me. And we're not really in contact anymore, but yeah, thank you, Dylan. But also, the years of suffering that he put me through because I wanted to get published after that.
No, we're talking about, what was it, 8 years of suffering before finally the good news is on the horizon?
Yeah, I think 7 or 8 years.
So knowing that eventually you're going to be a New York Times bestseller and you're going to be on the Middle Grade Ninja podcast, I mean, my God, things it's nothing but up for you. Does that not put that in perspective? Does that not make it feel worth it? Would you not do it again, knowing that that's going to be the conclusion?
Oh man. Oh, definitely. This is the reception to my books, like where I am now, it is beyond what I even fantasized about when in those like 8 years ago when I was like, oh man, my book is gonna be like it's gonna wow everyone. I'm gonna be a New York Times bestseller. And then I never even dared to fantasize that I would be like a number one. I would debut a number one. And then my book would be translated into like 14 languages. No, that's beyond even like my fantasies. And would I do it again though? I am not sure. I am not sure, but yeah, definitely it's been a long road. And I think there is definitely an element of luck to publishing. And so yeah, I can't answer whether I would do it again, just because I know that like if there's certain things hadn't gone exactly right for me, then maybe I wouldn't be in this position. So yeah, it's definitely like it worked out for me, but would it work out for me again? I don't know.
I think it's a strong possibility.
Okay.
The reason I say that is not just because you're talented, but because you've demonstrated such a capacity for hard work, whether it's through your YouTube channel or whether it's through your cosplay. Some of the cosplay photos I saw of you on Instagram are so intricate that it just the thought of putting the outfit together gave me anxiety. Like, no, I couldn't do that, but I'm so thrilled that that you're able to do that and pull that off.
Yeah, maybe it's because I am pretty cynical about publishing and the publishing process, but ultimately, I think most of the people I know who have worked at this for years have gotten something out of it. Like they have gotten agents, and their writing has improved by leaps and bounds, and they're just like on the cusp of being published, or they do have a book deal. So I think there is reason to be optimistic. I guess it's just me personally. I'm like super cynical.
Well, we like cynicism on this show, so I definitely want to hear some more of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a straightforward path. You major in health sciences with a focus on biochemical disease. Simon Fraser University, as an author, does.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So, when do you start thinking that maybe I step back from biochemical disease research and start focusing on fiction?
So it wasn't really a choice of mine because I graduated straight into the height of the pandemic, and I couldn't really go out and find jobs with my degree because like nobody was open. We were all supposed to stay home. This was like March or April 2020. So even though I already had a book deal by then, my parents were really nagging me to go job hunting, but I couldn't go job hunting. So that's when I just really buckled down and wrote Zachary in a frenzy. I was like, if I get a second book deal, then I know that I have what it takes. And my first book deal with Iron Widow wasn't just a fluke. And then it ended up selling at auction. So I guess it really just proved prove to myself that yes, I can do this. And now, even though I still do have passion for science, I think I'm not the best person in a lab. I don't really follow orders very well. I don't really do well in like a structured environment. So I think it's something that, I like learning about science more than I like doing it. So this ultimately it worked out better for everyone because I don't know if I should be trusted in a lab.
Well, does that not give you at least a solid foundation for which to do research for future science fiction stories?
Definitely, because the book that I worked on for the longest, it's called The Sapphire Age, and then it was about it was like hard-ish sci-fi. It took place like 1,000 years in the future, where humanity has either bioengineered or mechanically engineered themselves into mermaids. So we have like bio mermaids and cyborg mermaids, and then they have colonized the ocean as well. And then that book, so many people have told me the concept is super cool, and I had put some like realistic-ish science into it. And that book, although it didn't sell in novel form, it will be coming out in another form. So like I can't announce it yet, but like just stay tuned for that.
Can we maybe hint at what the form will be, or not even that?
There will be pictures. So it will be more visual.
So I noticed that the book is Zachary Ying is dedicated to your family, who did not take this writing thing seriously at first, not even after that first deal. When do they come around and say, okay, maybe this is going to work out for you?
Well, after Zachary sold at auction, like only after that, because that's why like I am like super passive aggressive in my dedication, because I do know that I have to thank them for like letting me stay under their roof while I wrote. But also they were like super like, oh no, like don't go into writing. This is a lottery. Like, and they did think that my Iron Widow book deal was a fluke. And then they were like, oh, you worked so many years to get just this one book deal, and it's like not even enough for you to live on. So what makes you think this is a viable career? And then yeah, Zachary was my was my attempt to actually, Zachary was my attempt to prove it to myself as well. I was like, so can I really do this? Because at that point, I was really doubting myself too. Because Iron Widow didn't really get the reception from publishers that I had hoped for. It got rejected by like a lot of publishers. And so Zachary, I wrote it and I was like, let's see how this does. If this does well, then I can continue on this path and being like a full-time author, even though I'm still not a full-time author. I guess YouTube is still a side gig. And yeah, so Zachary, only after the success of Zachary, how it sold at auction, did my family come around, and did I personally gain full confidence in myself.
So I know that Iron Widow is a New York Times bestseller. It didn't have a tremendous flashy sale when it first comes out. At what point does it begin to pick up steam and become a #1 New York Times bestseller? And why do you think it picked up steam?
I think it picked up steam as soon as the book announcement came out, because that book announcement went quite viral. I think now it has over 10,000 likes or something on Twitter. And I think, yeah, right after the announcement, I was like, oh, wow, people are really interested in this, because I was really doubting the concept because it didn't have a flashy sale at publishing. And then when you're in publishing, everyone's like, oh, if you don't sell in a 6-figure deal, then your book is going to tank and no one's ever going to read it. So yeah, there's that level of cynicism among the community, even though, it is possible to make a career on the mid list. But yeah, I think just authors were super cynical about being on the mid list, and everyone's like, oh no, publishing doesn't support the mid list, it's dying. And there's a lot of that going on among authors. But as soon as the announcement came out and I saw the level of enthusiasm, I was like, oh snap, like, yeah, this is something that like people are unexpectedly interested in. And then all my author friends told me to like not get too excited at the idea, at all the hype that comes out during an announcement. They told me that it would die off after like a few days, but the hype for Iron Widow never really died off after that announcement. It just like it kept going for like a year and a half until it culminated in debuting at #1.
Well, I love wonderful dramatic irony, and I know
Yeah.
that you talked publicly in the past about your concern while you were writing that story that it was not going to be mainstream enough to be successful.
Yeah.
So, do you feel happy to have been proven so dramatically wrong?
Well, definitely, because so many people have told me that Iron Widow's success gives them the confidence they need to like write their stories, and especially I think yeah, part of the reason Iron Widow didn't sell flashily was because publishing didn't have any confidence that why sci-fi could sell. It just has like this bias against all forms of YA sci-fi, and I think middle grade sci-fi too, because I did get a few rejections on Zachary, and that was like, oh, that this is too sciency for us, like even though it's just video games. And so yeah, I think publishing really like it does not quite know what it's doing, and I think that like everyone in the industry can attest that it's basically just like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, and then if something doesn't stick, then they're like, oh no, judging by this data, this won't do well. But you know, that's not really the best way to do things. But also like they want to be able to predict what could be successful, so they do like rely on that data, and they rely on like comp titles as a crutch. But also, so if something is not already on the shelves, then it's really hard to break in something fresh because they don't have data, they don't have comp titles, and they don't know how well they can't predict how well that book is going to do. So after Iron Widow did well, then it can serve as that like data point for other similar stories. So now publishers have something to point at and be like, yes, this can succeed. And I think I really hope that this helps a lot more people in the future.
Yeah, you provided a comp title that others will be able to use to convince publishing to pay attention. Although I was thinking as I was reading Zachary Ying that recently there have been some pretty high profile departures from publishing by editors with a number of complaints. But one of the complaints is they're spending all their time running the technical aspect of things because the senior people, and I'm assuming they don't have access to YouTube or podcasts, so they're never going to know how to say this, but they don't even do email. They have their emails printed up so they can respond manually and then have the emails typed up by someone and sent back to them. I think, well, that's somebody that's never going to understand Zachary. This is going to be well beyond them.
Yeah, it's that really baffles me about the higher ups of publishing. But yeah, I really do feel bad for the younger people who are just because like you don't go into publishing without passion for books, and it's really sad to think that like that passion could just be crushed by bureaucracy and all of those like non-tech savvy people, like really old people who are just running the scenes and trying to like predict what's gonna be hip in kidlit, but they don't even like do emails. So what's going on?
Of course, the obvious the obvious argument is if you knew and could predict with some regularity what is absolutely going to be successful, why is every book that you ever publish not a huge success?
Exactly. So yeah, I think publishers they don't know what they're doing quite as much as we hope they would.
That being said, any publishing professional who has appeared or who will appear on this show is a certified genius, understands everything about the market. We love and respect all of them.
Yes.
So, a couple more dark points, and then let's get into the book. But I know because I want to find out how you were able to persevere through a couple of these. One, I know your first agent left the industry, which has to be devastating.
At that point, it wasn't really devastating because I also felt like we weren't a good fit at that point, and I think it actually took the pressure off of me too, because I was really debating should I leave her or should I stick with her, because like it's really hard to find an agent, and if the responsibility had fallen on me to leave her, and then I know, like looking back, I spent another few years trying to find a second agent. So I think I really would have devastated me. if I had left her and then I struggled so hard to find a second agent, because I would have blamed myself for leaving all the time. So yeah, at that point, I was really just on the fence because she was not really a good communicator. She would go months before responding to my emails and my revisions. And that just put me in a really difficult position. So this is why I say to people now, I say to querying writers, it is better to have no agent than to have a bad agent that puts you really on the fence about leaving. Because yeah, it's a really tough decision whether to leave this like sort of security that you now have, or to make the choice to go into the trenches again. And yeah, so her leaving the industry, it didn't devastate me at all. It was a weight off my shoulders.
Well, another thing I wonder about is I know that you already had your first book deal before that YouTube video goes viral. Well, once that happens, once you've got this whole other means of self-expression and a built-in audience, does that not become a temptation to turn away from focusing on writing and focusing more on YouTube, and where it would seem, until the sales take off for the book, where your audience is going to be?
And I think yes, I definitely focused a lot more on my YouTube videos for the past year or so, just because out of financial necessity, because again, I didn't really get a very flashy sale for Iron Widow. It was not enough to live on. So YouTube has been the main source of my income for the past year, but now I am gonna wean back from doing videos because yeah, after doing these two things at the same time, I do realize that my number one passion is still to write books. So probably I'm going to do one more video and then I'm going to take a hiatus from YouTube. So announcing that here, I'm going to take a hiatus from doing YouTube videos until I get the Zachary Yin sequel done, I get the Iron Widow series done, and then I will make videos at my own leisure instead of, I'm not sure if I'm going to even take sponsorships on YouTube anymore, because sponsorships force me to be on a video schedule, and then it takes me away from my writing. And then now I realize, I still want writing to be my number one thing.
And I know Iron Widow 2 Heavenly Tyrant comes out spring next year, 2023.
I mean, hopefully, just because.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, hopefully, because just because of all the time that I had to spend doing other things, I haven't had the chance to work on it as much as I wanted to. So it might get delayed again. I don't know, but I do want the book to be good and not rushed out just for the sake of being on a schedule. So yeah, I hope that it will be a good sequel, and I will decide whether or not to delay it again, depending on how I feel about it. Because I want it to be good. I don't want to just like rush it into people's hands for the sake of like having it out. So yes, it will come out. Depends. Hopefully in like 2023.
Well, here's an absurdly personal question, because when you wrote the first book, it's just you writing, and you don't know about how big an audience is going to be out there. But now that the book has done so well and everyone's reading it, and you're hearing from readers, I assume, telling you how much they love it, how does that change your relationship to the sequel?
It is a lot more pressure for sure, because I just think I am like, I am really afraid of disappointing people with the sequel, because the sequel is pretty different. The vibes are different from Iron Widow, because Iron Widow is all about that like go, go, go energy. And then the sequel is basically Consequences, the book. Like, Zetian makes some very drastic decisions at the end of Iron Widow, and then most readers do cheer for that, but also in my heart I'm like, oh, there's no way that she could get away with doing that without facing like so many consequences. And the sequel is basically just like consequence after consequence crashing down on her, and so it's less straightforward of like a hot-blooded journey to the top. And it's a story about like after you get to the top, like how are you going to handle like everything that's going to come at you, because she's going to be like, oh well, I'm not going to spoil it, but she's going to have a lot of responsibility now, and people are going to look up to her for things just like mundane things like, oh, like what is your tax, like are you gonna reform the tax system? And she's gonna be like, what are taxes? I don't know, I'm 18 years old. So there's a lot of that in the sequel. So a lot more, I guess, like just realism and consequences. So it's very different from the first book, and I'm not sure if everyone's gonna like it, but it is the story that I do know needs to be told. It is the natural way that I think the story needs to unfold. So I just have to tell myself to like do what I know is right for the story, and then just not worry about people's reactions to it. Even though I do worry about people's reactions to it, because like you have people getting like full like tattoos of Zetian on their thigh, and I'm like, the series is not even over. What if you hate the later books? Oh god, you can't just laser that off your entire thigh. So yeah, that kind of stuff just freaks me out.
I had heard, John, I love this description. I heard you describe that first book as local girl ruins male fantasy for 400 pages.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Why? What does that mean? How did you ruin male fantasy for 400 pages?
Well, it's because Iron Widow is essentially a feminist take on my favorite genre of media, which is media that's like geared toward teenage boys. I don't know why that's the kind of like thing that I gravitate toward, but yeah, I really love stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh, mecha anime, and Dragon Ball Z, just like shonen anime, which is anime geared toward teenage boys. And I also like superhero stuff, which is also like pretty teenage boy centric. And the whole concept of Iron Widow is essentially like it would be a dream from the teenage boy's perspective. Like you get to pair up with a pretty girl to pilot this gigantic war machine. Like that's such a teen male fantasy, right? But then what if like it's told from the perspective of like that like teenage girl who's forced to be one of these like concubine pilots instead? And then like she finds this, like she sees all the like ugly sides to this entire like teen male fantasy system. So like it's told from her perspective, and it's about her like deconstructing and ruining that male fantasy. So that is why it's a feminist take on my favorite media.
And then, of course, you've got some polyamory in there as well, which I know was initially a concern of yours that has obviously proven. So I know you're worried about this second book, but looking back over things you've said in the past about, oh my gosh, this might not work, and then it works tremendously well.
Yeah.
Well, then probably the second book is going to work well as well. And then can we look forward to a third, or can we say yet?
I can't say anything yet because the announcement's now out, but let me just say there's a reason that I call it the Iron Widow series and not the Iron Widow duology.
Well, if esteemed audience can decipher that cryptic clue, they'll
Yeah.
they'll figure that out. Well, let's shift to middle grade. I know we talked briefly about Zachary Ying here at the start, but remind esteemed audience what do they need to know going into Zachary Ying and the Dragon Emperor?
Okay, so Zachary is about this Chinese American boy Zach who gets whisked away on a journey across China to heist magical artifacts and defeat figures from Chinese myth because he's like being coerced by like the first emperor of China. And then also his mom's soul has been snatched away by demons, so he has to go save her. And also the future, the entire fate of China might be at risk, so like no pressure.
None whatsoever. And who would you say is the ideal reader for this story?
I would say I wrote this story for my 12-year-old self. And so I guess essentially this book is dedicated to the future generation of diaspora like me, because I had a rough time growing up, just like trying to figure out who I am, figure out my identity. Like I spent years unpacking my thoughts, my feelings about like being Chinese and being Chinese Canadian, being Chinese diaspora. And in the book, I hope to do some of the unpacking for that future generation of diaspora. But I also think that like non-diaspora kids would enjoy it too, just because, you know, while I'm like tackling those heavy topics, I also wanted to have fun. And I hope that it is a fun book that like just any middle grade reader would enjoy.
Yeah, I love, without going too far, because I promise not to summarize your book, but I love that we start with Zachary putting some of the food his mother has prepared for him in the dumpster because he doesn't want his friends at school to smell it and to think of it as different. He's saved up money that he's going to buy his own lunch with. And we start there, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be a story about this, and it is. But then immediately we've got demon fights. So I'm like, oh, wonderful. So no question there. I'm very excited by that by that shift there because I didn't know exactly what to expect. Well, I like video games. This is fun. I'm curious to see where we go with it. Oh, Demon Fight! I'm in. Let's do this.
Okay.
So, and I want those AR the AR. They're not goggles, a visor. I looked up. I didn't know bone speakers were a thing. That's how far out of it that I am. I'm like, oh, could I get that? Is that a tech? I know that that's technology that exists, but is there anything close to the kind of video game technology with the Myth realm that you're talking about?
I would say Google Glass. It's pretty heavily inspired by Google Glass. So this actually takes place like in the near future. So about like 10 years, maybe 20 years after our time. And at that point, like AR technology is a lot more advanced. And I think they're slowly going at it. They are working on it. But yeah, the gaming system in Zachary is just inspired by like Google Glass and Pokemon Go, actually. Because Pokemon Go has an AR aspect, and Myth Realm is definitely very heavily inspired by Pokemon Go. It's just Pokemon Go is except with like myth creatures from all cultures. And yeah, so I am looking forward to what they do with like VR and AR in the future because my friend bought a VR headset from Facebook or whatever, and then I tried it and it was super cool. And so I think that's a developing field in technology, and it's super exciting to see where they take it.
Yeah, I've got a PSVR headset over there, and I'm looking forward to the PSVR too. But I still feel like, okay, this is the Atari, and it's lovely, and but improve it, work on it, get me to the point where I don't know I'm in a game. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yes, exactly. Like we can kind of see like, oh yeah, this is something budding. And I think that's really exciting, but also like this is still something super niche. Like we know that like I think when you wear those like super bulky VR goggles, you know in your heart that, you know, this is not the best we can do. We can make this better.
That being said, Skyrim VR, I never played Skyrim before. I played it in VR, like, oh, this hints at the promise of what's to come. It's not 100% there, but I can see it. I can see it just over the horizon. It's coming.
Yes, yeah, this is potential. Like, yes, definitely potential.
So hopefully by the time I'm ready for retirement, if not sooner, I can just retire to a VR world. Oh, wonderful.
Yes, exactly. Like, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. So okay, we get in the book, and I love that you introduce this idea that when Zach meets Simon right there at the start, before he is even comfortable connecting through Myth Realm, or they could potentially play the game together, he wants to know more about his views on the government, whether he respects them like some Americans respect our government. I love that you make that very explicit, because I think that Americans tend to think, well, we don't love and adhere to our government, when they absolutely do.
Yeah. Well, some people are like, oh no, like you got to respect the president, like no matter who he is. And well, we know how that turned out.
I don't have to respect nothing.
I know, right?
Yeah, we'll leave that there. So, is that a concern? Because I know that what grade 5 you come from China to British Columbia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh no, I think it was grade 6, and then I went to Ontario. I actually lived in a small Ontario town called London, and then that's where I kind of like paralleled Zach's Zach like living in a small town in Maine, and I think that was the like really close approximation I could get to like him being from like Ontario. Him being in a small Ontario town. No, it's me in a small Ontario town, and then he's in a small Maine town. And I didn't want to put him Ontario because I didn't want it to be like too autobiographical. I don't know. Is that a word? I don't know. I'm an author.
I think people know what we mean.
I'm
not even attempting because I know I'll get it wrong.
Yeah, so I didn't want like his experiences to be like identical to mine, because like that makes me feel weird things. And so his experience kind of reflects mine in that he was raised he was raised in New York, and then he got like shunted off to this small town of Maine, where he suddenly like faces much more like racial tension and like maybe like xenophobia and ignorance than he did in New York. And also he's growing up and becoming aware of like just how different he is, like quote unquote different. Yeah, so yeah, there's that. And what was the question again? I feel like I just rambled off topic.
Oh, I was just curious to know if that was based somewhat on your experience. If you were to meet somebody else who was from China at the time, would you want to know their politics before you got much closer to them, or is that something specific for the novel?
I think it is now. It is something that, yeah, it is a concern for me when I meet, especially people from mainland China. And this is not to say that like you should be like distrusting of people from mainland China, but for me personally, there is certain stuff that I know that if we disagreed on, then we can't be friends. Because if someone's fresh from mainland China and they've been like exposed to all the like media censorship while growing up, then they could have some opinions that I disagree with and is like very hard to change. And for me, I do have to know like what their stance is on like those sort of things, because before I become really close friends with them. And so yeah, that is just like stances on things like, I guess, like Taiwan, that's going to be super controversial, just like Taiwan or like Tibet. And like, do you think that there is a Uyghur genocide going on in Xinjiang? Because there is. But then there are those people who like just like really like viciously deny that's happening. And I just can't be friends with someone like that.
Is it the kind of situation where, if I encounter somebody who's a little bit younger, who's been, raised in a very conservative household and been watching Fox News every day?
Oh, yeah.
Point, and I say, okay, well, I'm going to talk to you in 5 years from now, and I'll check back in and see how you're doing, see how you've progressed. Hey, maybe you were exposed to some different types of media, some facts stuck in there, and then maybe we could talk, and you'll be better. And you say, hey, I'm so sorry about 5 years ago. I was crazy, but now I've got everything totally figured out. I'm like, oh, great, me too, and then we'll be fine.
Yes, exactly. Like this is the exact same situation. Like I can't be friends with someone who watches Fox News religiously.
Let's see, and then. Well, I want to talk a little bit about your writing process for this. Well, first, I want to talk about these chapter titles because I love that they're all how something happens. My favorite being how everybody sucks and nothing's over. Or,
yeah.
The creation of China was exactly like American Idol. Very funny chapter titles. When did you decide that was the best way to label the chapters?
It just sort of came about, to be honest, like because I wanted the chapter titles to be like really quirky and tongue-in-cheek, and of course that is inspired by the master of these, who is like a Rick Riordan. Is it Riordan or Riordan?
I think it's Riordan, but I'm not.
Riordan. Okay, yeah, inspired by Rick Riordan and his like really funny chapter titles. And I noticed that when I read those, and then I would see a particularly funny chapter title, I would like want to keep on reading. So I wanted that to like have the same vibe in Zachary Ying. And so yeah, that's just how it came about. And then the format, I didn't go in like wanting to make it a format, but then I realized that like the first like 3 or so chapter titles I wrote were all like how something something something. So I was like, you know what, let's keep doing this, let's make this a thing. Like all the chapter titles are going to be like a how-to guide now.
And Mr. Riordan, if you're listening, as you do every week, please come on the show.
Yeah,
I'm certain how to pronounce your name, and we'll talk about Percy and all kinds of other wonderful stuff.
Yes, let's come talk about the new show. Like, what is it like? Like, does it feel different from like the movie that you completely disowned?
I hope so. I've seen him say positive things on Twitter. I don't know if that's part of a contract he secretly signed, but I am assuming that if he's out there, he's saying that, given that he has been so open and honest about his opinions on the film version.
I know, right? That's so funny.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, it is. I don't think he's the type to like lie on social media just because he has to. He's very not that type of person, it seems, because like he was just straight up trashing that movie. The movie versions.
How much money would you have to come up with to buy him at this point,
I don't know. I don't think that he's like motivated by money.
I think you'd have to threaten something.
I know, right?
Well, have you thought about the possibility now that that you are a New York Times best-selling authors of one or both of your series being adapted to film or television?
Well, I can't announce anything, but let me just say that there is a certain type of deal for Iron Widow.
We're getting all the best scoops on this show tonight. This is great.
Yes.
That Iron Widow is joining the Marvel universe. That's what I heard.
Oh my god. No, that is Tony Stark. Okay, that is Tony Stark and like Black Widow's ship name. They're called Iron Widow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so like when people try to search on my book, they also come across a bunch of like Iron Man and Black Widow fan art, and that's really funny. And then I commissioned a parody of my characters as Iron Man and Black Widow just because I was like, hey, like Iron Widow shippers, I'm sorry that I'm clogging your tag, but here, I think you might like my book.
There's one more book. These coming up. Do we know how many Zachary books we're going to have at this point, or is that one of those things we still have to leave vague and nebulous?
Well, for now, I could definitively say that like I am sitting on a 2-book deal, and so there's definitely going to be a second book, and depending on how the first book does, I may or may not go for a third book. And well, this is going to be up to my publisher because they only contracted me for 2 books, and they keep saying it's a trilogy, but I'm like, hey, Simon and Schuster, slow down. You don't have me for a third book yet. Slow down. So yes, let's see how well the first book does, and then we'll see.
Well, I mean, does that impact how you plot and plan? Do you plot and plan, or do you sit down and write as it comes?
I really try to plot and plan. Because before Iron Widow, I was a pantser, which doesn't mean that I pants everyone. Doesn't mean that I pull down my pants in public. It means that I write like by the seat of my pants, and I just like go with whatever is happening in my head, like whatever feels right. But I realized that that is not the way to structure a story. So now I really try to make myself plot. I have a like whole plot skeleton that I fill in for every book. I have to know the ending. I have to know the character arc, and I fill in as much of that skeleton as I can. But still, like my instinct is to write. It's to pants. So I fill in as much of that as I can before I just like go in and write. And so yeah, I try to have some sort of outline going, and then for Zachary I do have like a vague idea for like a book 2 and book 3. Well, definitely I have a pretty strong idea of book 2, but and I have a vague idea for book 3 and like the overarching story arc and character arc. So yeah, I do try to have that. At least I have to know the ending, and then I have to know how the protagonist will grow. So only then can you write a story with momentum, because you have to know where you're going to like know the most efficient route toward it. You know what I mean?
Well, do you find that I know this has happened to me, and it's happened to a number of authors I've talked to, that I will sit down and I'll make something of a plan. It's always a very loose outline, but then the character will say, no,
yes. Yeah, that's why I don't feel as bad when I can't really fill in my plot skeleton, because I know that things are going to change once I actually start writing. And then it's funny because I actually made a bunch of memes for my Iron Widow 2. Like making memes is how I procrastinate on writing the actual book. And then I made a few memes like 6 months ago, and then I came back to those memes I think a few weeks ago, and I was like, wow, like this is all wrong now. None of this applies anymore.
I love that it's writing adjacent, making memes about your writing, right? I mean,
yes. Oh, and what's also writing adjacent is doing research. Like, yes, it has actually worked for me to watch like a 45-minute documentary on like hydraulic dams in China. Yeah, this is totally research. I can spend like 2 hours on it, and then I go back and I write 1 sentence of world building. But yeah, no, research is totally work.
Wasn't there a hydraulic dam in a favorite television show of mine? I better binge watch it just to be sure.
I know. Oh my god, yeah. No, I do the same thing. Like I would watch a TV show because I'm like, oh, this has mildly similar plot like elements to my sequel that I'm writing. So I better watch it to make sure that I get enough inspiration.
How the lies writers tell themselves.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Then I can expense my Netflix subscription. as work expenses. That's valid. This is all research.
Every book you ever buy till the end of time, that's all research.
It's true. You can expense as an author. You can expense all of your books because they are considered. It's work. I mean, you read books; those are the stuff. Like those are the stories by your colleagues, and then it's a work expense to buy all of your colleagues' products. Just it's valid.
And it is. What are you going to be, the jerk that shows up to your colleague's book event and doesn't buy the book?
I know, right?
I mean, we're just trading because when you come to my event, you're going to buy my book, so it's all going to work out.
I have like a whole shelf of just like friend books. This is my friend bookshelf, like that.
Fortunately, one nice perk about hosting a show like this is people send me all the books I want to read for free. Oh, how wonderful!
Oh, I know, right?
I'm rolling in the books. It's
I know. No, I love getting arcs because some of them are just like they're super exclusive. Like I have oh god, where is my like look at that. This is just straight up like this is Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim, and this is just straight up like look at that. This is so exclusive. Nobody, probably only like 5 other people have an edition as exclusive as this. So
are they hoping for a blurb, or they just thought you would like it and hoping you'll say anything about it, or?
Oh no, people send me all sorts of books for blurbs. So I'm on a really tight blurb deadline. I always have like 4 or 5 upcoming books to read because they want me to blurb it.
Well, let's talk briefly about blurb etiquette, because I imagine lots of folks that are watching or listening to us have the same idea in their mind. How do I get you to blurb my book? So what is the best way to approach you? And should anyone approach you? I mean, for God's sake, you've got to finish Iron Widow. You've got to get Zachary Ying. You have things to do. We can't have you focusing solely on blurbs.
Oh, well, oh God, I am such a... because like so many of the books that come to me like are books that I'm legitimately interested in, and so I'm like, oh man, I'm so busy, but also I do really want to read this. So now I'm like, okay, please send me an arc and I will make no promises about actually getting the blurb in on time, but this interests me and I will try to read it. And I think send out your blurb requests as early as possible to give authors some time to like put them in your schedule. And if you send them earlier, then like you go to the top of my queue. Yeah, so make sure that you don't give like just a 2 months notice for the blurbs. Give more than that. And also, I don't really care how you come to me. Like some people have come to me through Twitter DMs. Some like will have a whole formal thing where they're like their publisher writes a letter and then send it to my agent, and then my agent like does the whole like exchange with like email addresses and stuff. It doesn't really matter to me. Just like if your concept interests me, then I am open to like reading your arc. But whether or not I have the time to read, it really depends on how much advance notice you give me.
Well, let's go through your average schedule at this point. What does your writing day look like?
Suffering.
Sure. What time does the suffering begin, and how long does it last for?
It depends, because you know what, today I was lying in bed and then I was like if I call Alexa now she's gonna respond, but I was like Lexa, wake me up at because I knew that like this was gonna happen at like 5 p.m. my time. So I was like, Lexa, wake me up at 3 p.m. And then she was like, oh, I will wake you up at 3 p.m. tomorrow. And then that made me realize it was already like 3:45. And then I was like, oh, I better wake up. So yeah, today I woke up at like 3:45 p.m. and that's a pretty regular thing for me, but it's not regular for me to not realize it. I was like, oh man, I must have passed out.
Are you a night owl then?
Definitely. Most of my writing, unfortunately, does get done in the middle of the night. It's something that I wish wasn't the case, but somehow it is. Like somehow my creative juices just flow more freely during the night. I have I have a suspicion that it's because I'm meant to be in the old world, like in the Chinese time zone. That's how my body is adapted. But I don't know. Probably if I went back into China, I would like be on a Canadian time zone again. Just for some reason, I always have to like my creativity just only flows at night. So I wake up whenever. This can be anytime between 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then I wake up, I get something to eat, though not right now because it's Ramadan. So I wake up. If it's not Ramadan, I get something to eat, and then I somehow and then I look at my inbox. I go because today I woke up to like 12 new emails in my inbox, and I was like So I do that. I agonize for a while over emails. I may or may not answer them. Depends. Depends on how I'm feeling. And then somehow I basically this somehow just things happen, and then all of a sudden it's in the middle of the night where I can finally get started on my writing. And I write on, this is my secret weapon. I write on an AlphaSmart 3000, a word processor, and it only has like this much, like 4 lines of space where you can see like what you've written, so it prevents you from going back and editing. And it also like it does nothing else, so it's really distraction free. And I wrote the entirety of Zachary on this, which is super helpful. So yes, for all of the writers out there and who find it really difficult to concentrate, this like get yourself an AlphaSmart. It will like really help you with things. So yes, and it may not be 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. where I finally get too tired to keep going and I go to sleep. So that is my very, very chaotic and not at all glamorous schedule.
Well, when you've got only 4 lines, you're not going back, you're not checking it, you're just only going forward. Do you have any other screen or any other piece of paper with notes about where do you keep your outline? Is the outline printed up someplace?
Oh, it's not. It's on my computer. And then before I write, I like look at my outline on my computer, and then I look at what's supposed to be happening, and then I go on my AlphaSmart, and then I try to just like type it out. I try to go for it.
Now, what's a successful day look like for you? Do you have like a word count you're trying to hit? Do you have a scene you want to get to?
Yes. My goal every day is 2,000 words, and then some days I hit it. Most of the days I do not. But you know what? Like, words are words, and eventually, you keep it up for enough, and eventually a book comes out, and that's all that matters. Just I try not to beat myself up too much about it anymore, but yeah, eventually a book comes out, and that's what matters.
Well, I imagine if you're working at night, one nice thing about that is once you've gotten through the bottom of your inbox, then it's done because everybody else is in bed, the world is quiet, and you can just focus, right?
Exactly. Unless stuff from my UK publisher comes to me and they're just like, oh, hey, I like 3 a.m. like, hey, Xiran, I want to do this event. I'm like,
So, and then how about reading? Do you slot in time for reading as well?
Yes, the reading, oh my God, reading happens before I go to bed. So there's a time where like, okay, so if like 3 a.m. is the time where in my head I'm mentally like, okay, you should really go to bed now. It is 3 a.m. And then that's the time where I like put away all my things, my computer, and then I lie down on bed, and then I open my Kindle and start reading. It's probably it's not the best habit, but then I always have to just like read a little bit before I go to bed.
I think reading before bed is like one of the most healthy habits you could possibly have. Esteemed
Oh, really? Okay.
Read before bed.
Yes. So yes, I always have to read a little bit before bed.
Some of you aren't reading enough. Read more.
I know.
So, and we talk like I'm talking to you about this. Like, I don't know that you have other things you have to do, like making time for us today, which we appreciate. Then you've got other author events. You've got your launch coming up, although having it just happened by the time esteemed audience is hearing us. How do you manage all of the author events and promotion that you need to do? And then we'll get to social media because we haven't touched that yet.
Oh man, I don't really. I have a schedule in a sticky note, a digital sticky note on my computer, and then every day I just look at what I have to do. If something's happening the next day, then I try to go to bed at a reasonable time, and I set an alarm. And I think doing these events is fun and necessary because otherwise my days would be like so monotonous that time passes by really fast, and then I kind of like get into a slump. And I think doing events energizes me to like keep writing, because then because like so much of writing is just like being in your room and being alone, and then I don't think you fully feel the impact of like the stuff that you're doing until like you go out and then you meet people who are like big fans of your work, and you're like, wow, I am like really reaching out to a lot of people. Like I better like I better like write the sequel faster. So many of them are asking me for it. So yeah, being able to feel the impact that you have on people is super powerful, and it manages to energize me. So yeah, I do like doing in-person events, and then I cannot wait to do my tour of the United States for Zachary. And I'm gonna be doing like a whole circle. Like there's Boston, and then I'm going to Austin, and then San Diego, and of course there's New York. So yes, I'm just gonna go in a loop around the coast.
What's been your favorite reader reaction to something you've written so far?
Oh, yes, I have a definitive one. And it's actually a post that I saw on Tumblr. And it's about this poster who was in France. And then they were like, oh, I was looking at the French edition of Iron Widow in a bookstore longingly, and then my dad was like, "Oh, like I'll just get it." And then their dad read it, and then in their next phone call to their dad was like, "Oh, so I read that book about Chinese people that you picked up. It was really good. Is there more?" So that's my favorite reaction, just because of how wholesome it is. Like now my book is the book about Chinese people, I guess, it's super funny. But I'm really glad that this like random French dad enjoyed my book.
I mean, it's technically not inaccurate. I don't know about but it's a.
Yeah.
So well, a question that esteemed audience knows that I have to ask, because I ask everybody who comes on the show, and then we'll talk social media, because I'm fascinated by how you're finding time to manage all of that. But I ask everybody who comes on the show, have you ever seen a ghost and or a flying saucer?
Not a ghost, but I'm convinced that my cats can see things that we can't. Like I am pretty sure, because we know that cats can smell things that we can't. So like it's just natural to assume that they can see things that we can't, because sometimes my cats will just like stare at a spot and I'm like, what are you looking at? And I'm pretty sure that it's something that we can't see. So I don't know if it's a ghost, but I'm convinced that they can see things that we can't.
I've had more than one cat now who would get freaked out about a certain period of night. Usually right around 10:30, they start just running around the house and meowing wildly, and they do it for about 10 minutes, and then they're done. What got you so riled up?
Yeah. Well, those are the zoomies, but then what triggers the zoomies? We don't know. It's a mystery.
You own multiple cats, right?
I have two, Coco Chin and Timuji.
Two kitties.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then other animals, or just the cats?
There's my dad's fish, but those are his. And so yeah, just my cats, and I love them so much.
So let's talk social media. So you had that video in 2020, the live action Mulan movie critique that goes over what, 3 million views?
Yeah, it has like 3.6 now, which is just bad. Wait, no. The 2021 has like 3.2 or something. It's my 1998 cartoon Mulan review that has like 3.6 million. So which is just completely baffling to me, because those are long videos and people really sat through them. Okay.
So how do you, because I know you do additional media critiques. So when did you decide to also do Chinese history?
Oh, I always wanted to do Chinese history on my YouTube videos. Like, I think right in one of my first I think in my Mulan 1998 video, I was already promising to do videos about Chinese history because, you know, that's my real gig. That's the stuff I really want to talk about. And then in my media reviews, I do find a lot of excuses to start talking about Chinese history. And of course, Zachary Yin is just Zachary Yin, the book, is just one big excuse to like tell people about Chinese history. And in my original draft of Zachary Yin, there was actually like so many more historical stories that my agent was like, okay, this is too much. You got to cut some of this out. You have to like focus on actually telling a story, you know? And I'm like, oh, okay, fine.
Well, anybody that is curious, and I never tire of telling people other YouTube channels they could be watching while they're watching us. But if they go to your channel right now, they can look at your playlist for Chinese history. And I was watching How a Nun Became China's Only Female Emperor, and it looks like you've just sat down and extemporaneously off the top of your head started talking history. And obviously there are edits because I can see your cat moving around in the background. But it looks like it's one long take, and is that true? Can that possibly?
That is not true at all. I have to like really heavily edit down myself because I am actually not that good of an orator. And then so I also have like this what are those things called where it's like the things that like news people read off, like you see Lester Holt on NBC, and of course he's not like reciting all the news off the top of his. It's a teleprompter. That's the word I was looking for. So I have to write an entire script and then I read off of a teleprompter because otherwise I can't recite all that information off the top of my head. And then I have gotten better at my like actual raw footage to edited footage ratio. I would say that I have to edit it down. I have to edit about 2/3 of bad takes out of it. And at the beginning, when I first started doing YouTube, it was like I had to edit away 3/4 of just bad takes of just like and then sentences I mess up. So yeah, there is a lot that you don't see that I keep in my computer, and the final product, it's a very like edited down, sanitized version of just the chaotic take that I did.
So how long does that script that you should start with? Yeah, how long is the script?
Script, I seem to have a tendency to go, well, for my history topics, I go for like 40 minutes. And I try to make that like my limit, 40 minutes, my limit to how long a video is. And then nowadays, I think whenever I do a video, I go for like 20 something minutes. Like my latest video, Turning Red, it was like 25 minutes or something. And I try to be shorter, but somehow I always end up writing like 20 minutes worth of material.
Sorry, are you writing like word for word what you expect to say, or is it just, hey, hit these key points along the way, and then maybe some ideas for jokes, because they're very funny, these videos.
Oh.
How what does the script look like to get you prepared?
Oh, it is word for word. Because I'm not good at improv, so I do some improv, but not a lot. And also, if I stray away from the script, then it's going to be a pain for me to like do the subtitles later. So I try to like write the script exactly as I like want me to like say in the video. And yeah, so it's very very tightly scripted, because otherwise it's just a pain to deal with later.
And you do the subtitles yourself?
Yeah, it's super simple. I discovered like before, the subtitles were done by my assistant Trisha, but now I realize that YouTube just lets you like upload the entire script, and then it will automatically just like try and match it to what you say, which is nice. Like, thanks, YouTube.
Oh wow. So yeah, you've already written the full script anyway. Why not? That makes sense.
I know, yeah. So I could just so I try not to stray off the script to not cause pain for me in the subtitle department.
So, the extra pressure of, do you want to correct your subtitles later? Better read it more or less exact.
Exactly.
So how long from beginning to research to writing the script to recording the video to editing the video to putting the video up, how long would a 40-minute history video take you to put together?
Oh, a 40-minute history video, definitely more than a week. For my shorter videos, around the 20-minute something mark, it is also around a week. Like I would like to finish the script in like one day, but that never happens. So a script takes me 3, 4, maybe 5 days, and then I film, and then it takes me like probably 12 hours to edit. And most of this editing is done overnight because I'm always behind my deadlines for the videos. And then I upload it to my sponsors for them to approve my sponsored segment, and then I get to go live.
And how do you deal with nerves? Because the only way I can do a show like this is I remember it's just you and me having a conversation right now. And if should anybody watch or listen to it later, that's their business. That's got nothing to do with me. But if I were you and it's just me there reading the script, and I know that you're going to have as of this recording, 426,000 potential subscribers who might tune in, well over 100,000 on any given video, sometimes into 200, 300, 400,000. They're all looking right at you, looking into the camera. Does that not ever give you pause? How do you overcome that? You're human. That must give you a little bit of nervousness. How do you overcome that?
Actually, I don't get nervous when I record videos. I think having a really solid script definitely helps, because beforehand I've already ironed out everything I want to say, and then I have like thought about like how this might be received. So I like to do really heavy edits on the script, and yeah, having a really solid script, and then I just sit down and just like read the teleprompter, and then it works out fine.
That's amazing. So how do you know, when do you feel that you've had a successful video?
I would consider all of my videos successes, just because, if I manage to get the video done, that's a success for me. So I don't really have a measure of like, oh, like I wish this had how many thousands of views or whatever. I don't really measure myself by that, because I know that some topics I talk about are inherently like super, super obscure. So I would talk about, so for example, I would talk about like this queen from the Shang dynasty, and it's somehow like it has people are watching it. That's a win for me, because these are stories of my passion, stories that I'm like really want the world to know. And as long as people are watching it, that's a success for me. And then there's videos which success catches me off guard, like my it was a 10 video, the how a nun became China's first only female emperor. That has like so many views, which really surprised me, because it is just me talking history for 40 minutes. And so yeah, all of my videos surprise me with their success, because I don't chase trends. I only do videos with topics that are close to my heart, that I'm passionate about. And so yeah, every video is a success for me, because I am always surprised that people are so interested in what I have to say.
You're so obviously knowledgeable about the history. How do you get to that point? Where do you gather your sources? Because you're not talking opinion. This is all fact that somebody, being the internet, is going to be going through with the fine-tooth comb and making sure everything is correct, right?
I know, definitely, yeah. There are always going to be like those nerds who are going to fact check your information. So I aim to be the nerd who like fact check their own information first. Like I am my own worst critic. And I always, if there's even like something that I'm like, I have the slightest doubt about, I go in and I research, I research the H word out of it. Yeah. And so yeah,
subscribers.
yeah. Especially, I think having the ability to type and read Chinese really helps, because most of this, the history that has been studied for thousands of years, like whatever questions you have, someone else has already asked it. And if you Google hard enough, then you can find where people have discussed like, oh, is this true? Is this true? And if this is true because of these reasons. So I like look at those. I really like try to just iron out all of the like doubts that I had. And I look at like lectures by history professors in Chinese, because like Chinese sources are always going to be the best. I do not trust English sources, especially English sources on the internet about this kind of thing. But with like Chinese professors and stuff, those like people who have studied the history, studied the primary resources for like years and years of their academic lives, you know that their word is probably trustworthy. So yeah, I really rely heavily on just lectures that are available online. And yeah, that's just Chinese history communication is a lot stronger in China than I feel than in the West. Just because like in China, you have like celebrity historians and archaeologists who are like always on TV, and they do they have like variety shows about artifacts, which is just amazing. And yeah, it's like the history communication, like pop history is a lot stronger in China. And so you can find these people who are reliable, and then you can find what they've said and to like fact check your stuff. And yeah, so like for example, my Empress Wu series is heavily based on a series of lectures by the professor Meng Man, who I really respect, and I know all of her stuff is like fact checked and true. So I like really leaned into those lectures while I was doing those videos.
And your passion is evident, whether it's through the videos, whether it's through the books. How far does that go back? When did you first have a strong interest in Chinese history and history in general?
I think, well, my dad is really into Chinese history, and I get a whole bunch of like, he has a huge library full of like books on Chinese history, and I regularly consult them. But I think, yeah, ever since I was a kid, I would be watching like lecture series on TV because that's what's broadcasted on Chinese television, just like history professors just straight up giving you a lecture. And I think that has really influenced the style of my videos, because like most pop history videos on YouTube are like animations, which I do really respect, but I can't personally do animations. So that's why my videos are just me talking at the camera. And yeah, I'm very influenced by those like history lectures that I watched as a kid on Chinese TV. And then in recent years, I got really, really back into Chinese history again, because the stories just inspire me, like especially the stories that are like more counterculture, like about rebels and about these like women who managed to like become super powerful in spite of like Confucian doctrine that women have to like stay in the shadows and like support men instead. And so I'm really inspired by these stories of just people breaking the mold and yeah, rebelling and just like living their authentic lives. It's like the counterculture people. And so yeah, that's where my interest in Chinese history comes from.
Well, I think it's fair to say you're a counterculture person, yeah.
For sure. I think I was born rebellious. Like in my most recent video on the Turning Red, I talk a lot about how like my family wanted me to be a certain way, and then I just never worked. Like my parents have long learned the lesson that they can't really force me to do anything I don't want to.
Have they actually learned it? Mine haven't.
No, they have not learned it. They still try, but nowadays I have more clout to speak out against that, because they can't tell me to like go out and find a job anymore because I make more money than them. So
well, there you go. When my mom or my dad say something that I just always bear in mind, this is love. This is just how they're showing it. They're concerned for me. Then their goal is for me to be their version of a happier, better than me, and I can focus on that aspect of it and appreciate it for that intention.
Yes, this is why, like people may be really shocked that I still have a relationship with my parents after like all they've done to like prevent me from going into writing. But I just think to myself, you know what, like it really must be like frightening as an immigrant to like watch your kid like go into a field that has basically no like stability, no automatic stability, and then you're basically like you're kind of, it must be hard to like watch your kid possibly like throw their entire lives away and like not have like descend into the kind of poverty that you like escape from the country to avoid. And there was no guarantee that I was ever going to make it in writing, so I think they were trying to be like all wise and sagely and prevent me from ruining my own life. And so I'm like, you know what, you had good intentions, you were a bit mean about it, but you know what, I forgive you. I forgive you for this.
Well, just hypothetical, if they had been very supportive and said, yes, you're for sure going to be successful, keep going, do you think there's a possibility that you might not have worked so hard?
That's an interesting question, and I don't know. Because yeah, I honestly don't know. I think if I had their support and I was able to go into writing just like, well, don't know if I would have gotten a creative writing degree, but I think I would have been published at an earlier age, which is not necessarily a good thing because I am happy with the age that I got published at. I think this age that I'm at right now, I'm like I'm finally out of university. I am like mature enough to deal with like all of the unexpected aspects that come with publishing, like being a public figure. I definitely at like 19, I was definitely not ready to be a public figure, and so yeah, so I'm not sure in that alternate timeline where I would have had a supportive parents that I don't know.
Well, past a certain point, it's just an exercise, and what a fun thought. But we know what did happen, so whatever.
Yeah, mainly because I can't really imagine my parents being supportive of a in progress me. It's only after like I have definitively had success that they were like, oh wow, look, we're so proud. Well, of course you are. I'm successful now.
Well, now at this point, talking about stepping back a little bit from YouTube to focus on writing. You've been so successful on YouTube. Could you give that audience away, the hundreds of thousands of people you know are going to tune in when you have something to say?
Oh, I would not like straight up give the audience away, because there's always going to be like, I have so many video ideas that I want to do. It's just that, you know, my literary career has kind of like taken a step back, and I need to catch up. So I'm just going to take a short break. Hopefully it won't be too long, but I still think I'm still going to make videos, just not on such a like tight schedule anymore. I'm going to be writing, I'll write my scripts in my so-called spare time whenever I feel like it. There's still so much that I have to share with my audience. Like I am planning a video on like the entire history of China. Like, have you seen that like Bill Wurtz's The History of the World? I guess I want to do one of those, except for Chinese history, but that's going to be a lot of work. And so I'm just going to slowly chip away at that. But for sure, I'm really grateful to have this platform, and I would never give it up. I wouldn't just never straight up quit YouTubing.
What's that script going to look like for the entire history of China?
Oh boy, I don't know, but it's going to be fun, I hope.
I mean, when you're done, send it off to your publisher and say, hey, go ahead and put this out as nonfiction.
Oh yeah.
Let's come at it on all fronts here. So, knowing that you've been successful now online, you've been successful on YouTube, you've been successful on Twitter, on Instagram, and certainly as an author, are there mediums that you yet yearn to reach out to? I know you mentioned that you've maybe got another project working for your first novel, that we can't say anything other than involves pictures. But
yes.
At some point, do you want to do interpretive dance? Do you want to do some type of painting? What might yet be on the horizon?
This is a lot on my plate already, so I am happy with the way things are, and maybe I would want to I don't know, maybe I would want to break into Hollywood, possibly, but I'm not sure. It's not really I don't really have a burning desire to go into Hollywood, but if it happens, then you know, that'll be great. But yeah, right now I am at a comfortable place.
What aspect of movies what position in Hollywood would you like to hold?
And just like, I guess what I mean by that is just like Hollywood adapting my stuff, and which may or may not happen for Iron Widow. I cannot announce yet, but yes, Iron Widow has a deal at something that rhymes with Hollywood.
Cryptic clues no one can solve. Yeah. Well, like if they came to you and they said that we want you to direct, would that be of interest to you?
I'm probably not. I don't see myself as a good director. I don't know anything about it. And I think it will be super unfair to those people who have like been in film school for 4 years for me to just like randomly sit in the director's seat and be like, okay, everyone, let's get started. I think, I'm comfortable where I am, just because if I branch into other stuff, it just feels unfair to those people who have like worked for so long to like actually do those things.
Fair enough. Well, I'm watching our time, and it flew by. What happens?
Yes.
That's what happens when you have an excellent conversation with somebody you admire and want to know more about. So I appreciate you making the time tonight for this evening. Although you're going to keep writing, so I hope that someday we'll get back together and we'll do this again. But for tonight, my last question is usually some variation. If you could go back to the start of your writing career, middle of your writing career, wherever it would have been useful to you, and give yourself some advice that might have made easier your path and might make easier the paths of everyone who's watching or listening to us now, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Okay, I would go right back to my 15-year-old self and tell them, learn how to plot, have an ending in mind, do like at least a 3-act structure or something, have like a beat sheet, like know the destination of what you want to write, know what you want to end up with, and stop like just meandering through your story. Stop it.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. Where can an esteemed audience find you online, follow you on social media, and all that good stuff?
Okay, so I am Xiran Zhao on basically all the social media platforms: Twitter, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr. I'm on all of those sites.
And as always, esteemed audience, for more information about me and more importantly, interviews with thousands of editors, literary agents, authors, the world's best people, head to middlegradeninja.com, download your free copy of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, and God willing and I'm alive, I'll see you next week.